welcome to Extreme Graphics Tech. It's been a while, I have not made a video for the channel, but I was working a little bit on this, and I have to thank CD Projekt for giving me the key for the PlayStation 5 game so I could start recording and testing earlier. This is not going to be like a full proper technical analysis or a full proper performance analysis, because that will take a while to make. So I'm working on it. I'm going to be testing on different PC parts, ARC and everything included, but please have some patience and wait for that. In the meantime, I just wanted to show you some of the difference between platforms and my thoughts on the graphical improvements. So as you can see here, which is a little bit hard to synchronize because, you know, they have little difference, frame miss here or there, which makes this a little bit of a pain. However, I think I did my best. You can see it's hard to see starting any real differences in just, you know, by just looking at this. At first, you like don't really see any difference other than maybe the color cast by the global illumination. In this case, you can see there is a different global color cast on the character, and I think it's because they have redone the skies and they look much nicer now. And if you check, the PlayStation 5 ray tracing is even like the more bright of them all, and I think this is due to the global illumination of the ray tracing generating a more realistic cast light to the environment. So I'm comparing here the PC original against the PlayStation performance and ray tracing, just to show you that the PC version is still very good, and in some cases is superior to the PlayStation 5, even the ray tracing ones. But that's just because things like the shadow distance is much higher on PC, even on the PlayStation 5 performance or ray tracing versions of the game. When we're looking this side by side very fast, it's hard to realize other changes, but the PlayStation 5 and the version has other changes that in general I think makes the game look good in some areas, but it doesn't get in other to the point where the PC original was. But if I had to choose one of the two versions, I would probably prefer the PlayStation version because of all the other changes that the game brings to the table, which is not only related, you know, to ray tracing, but also some textures are improved, some models are improved in terms of tessellation and amount of geometry, etc. Also the quality of life improvements. However, we are going to be watching this with more slowly. We're going to make some comparisons between platforms, and I can start giving you my thoughts on this. So one of the first things you're going to notice is that the ray tracing version, the characters tell to self-shadow themselves, which add more, you know, believability. Well, you know, they are more believable. So, yeah, that's one of those words I can say very well. So now let's compare the PC original version with the new RTX version. This is completely running max out on all settings that the game allow you to change. And once again, you know, at first look, even we're watching this with full ray tracing and many other changes, it's hard to find the difference other than maybe the color of light. But if you pay attention, you're going to see that the elements have more tessellation to them. And one of the funny things here in this scene is that that pendulum that is moving casts shadow in the new ray trace version on PlayStation 5 too, and it doesn't cast shadow on the original PC version, which I found interesting. I'm not quite sure why is that, but anyway, you can see that the light is bouncing and giving the objects, you know, transferring some of that color to them. You can see that in the marble behind in the balcony. You can see that here the shadows are stronger in the new RTX version, making the ambient occlusion is much better also on this version, because that's another one of the ray trace options. But let's just pause some shots for a second so we can start looking at with more detailment what are some of the difference. So let's just wait, and I have like a comparison around here. It should come any second now.
This has to end now.
So here, look at the background. that you can see the herb, and now look at it. The shadows are more stronger, and the actual model is much more defined in the new version. When it comes to the texture, I have to say I don't see that much of a difference everywhere, especially on characters. There are other sides where it looks much better. Look at the tower on the back of Gerald. You can see that in the new version it has more tessellation, it's more detailed, there is a lot more going on. So that's one of the changes that I like. And here you can see that the wood post in there and the rope is much more detailed. Let's look at this comparison shot right here. To begin with, look, all the vegetation changes completely and the posts are more rounded, and the same for the rope. So everything has improved a lot in terms of geometry for the game. Well, I don't know if everything, but at least everything I have seen has a lot more geometry. I think this is based on the work of a modder, actually. So probably CD Projekt contacted him to use the mod in this version of the game, and maybe he made some money. I hope he did, because he did a great work. In terms of vegetation, the vegetation is more abundant, but also it's different. It's not exactly the same, and even though in general it's more abundant, I have found places where it has less. It's not worse or better, it's just different. I find some areas where in general it looks much nicer, but you know, it's not like a game changing, but it's nice to have. This is the PlayStation 5 ray tracing version against the performance version. You can see that the shadows are more strong in the ray tracing. If you check here in this shot, the sword from Gerald casts shadows on Gerald, while it doesn't do the same on the performance version because there is no ray tracing. Now, comparing some shots is hard because they changed the way the camera works, and it's different on PlayStation and PC, so it's hard to align these pictures here just to show you some differences. But you can see that the ray trace lighting really adds a lot to the scenes. They look much nicer in general. Look at this scene here on the PC original, and now look at the new version RTX. The light is much better, the vegetation is better, and it's also more dense. This is one of my favorite scenes, and you can see that in the new version it looks so more believable. The lighting, from my point of view, looks better. Here the scene changes mostly on vegetations. Of course, the lighting and the shadows make it have a stronger look, but you can see that the vegetation changed a lot. This one, you can see reflections, which is another ray trace part of PC, and look how it makes this scene more believable because it's reflecting all the trees above it. Here is another one of those strong light vegetation areas. There is not much to say. As I said, not every scene is as strong. Here is another scene that we have a stronger cast of shadow and the light is more believable, but I don't think there is a big difference with or without ray tracing. This scene, however, from my point of view, changes completely. Look at this. It's not just the lightning, but also the whole vegetation and the whole mood of the scene is different. This is another one where even though there is like 2 minutes of difference in time, the lighting color cast is completely different, making this one, from my point of view, more believable in terms of night. The reflection here is quite awesome. Look at that. Look how good it looks now, reflecting the sky and everything else. And even interiors change. It goes from this sort of light place to a more dark and obscure place, which seems more believable than the original was. Now I'm going to do some gameplay just to show you things and, you know, go around with you and talk a little bit about the game. Here I'm using 4K Ultra on an RTX 4090, and I'm using DLSS 3 and DLSS 2 in quality mode. When you see up there DLSS 3, it means I'm using frame generation, and then the quality is talking about the DLSS 2 level, okay? So if you see DLSS 2 performance, it means I'm not using frame generation. If you see DLSS 3 balance, it means I'm using frame generation plus DLSS 2. They don't have to be used together, so just to let you know. So you can see here that we can get up to 100 and something frames. You can see that the games have a bigger vista, more views, and this seems to be quite good looking game. Now look at all the reflections in the water and making everything more cohesive. But in terms of performance, I have to say that this game seems to be using only 1 or 2 cores, and the rest of them are not being put on much use. The problem with this is that it makes that the ray tracing part of this is super heavy. So at the moment I'm using like 90% of the GPU, and that's because I'm using frame generation. However, if I turn frame generation off, the story changes, and you're going to see that I am completely CPU bound. Okay, but that's because this game is very bad when it comes to CPU cores utilization. You can see that from the graph there. So now we are going to be turning off DLSS frame generation, and even with an RTX 4090 and DLSS 2 in quality mode, if I don't remember wrong. Let me just check what the option was that I use here, and you're showing you that the game is running at top level. I haven't done anything. The game is still at 49 to 50 FPS. So DLSS 3 effectively doubles the frame rate, but in this case with DLSS 2 and quality mode we still get 40. And you can see now that the GPU is using only 70 to 80% of it. That's because, as I said, this is a very CPU bound game, unfortunately, especially for ray tracing. I think, I don't know if they are going to optimize that, or this is the last thing we are going to know from CD Projekt. I hope they fix some of the little errors. They said that any update that came after this was just to fix problems with this update, not to add or, improve anything else in terms of adding more features or anything else like that. So let's see what they decide to do. In any case, I will say the game still looks very good. It's the same. It runs decent, all considered. This is not a top of the line CPU, even though I don't think it's a an old or anything like that. It still should run very well considering what it is. So now what I did was lower, if I don't remember wrong, the DLS quality from quality to balance, and you're going to see that you don't really gain anything or at all, and that's it, as I said, because I'm completely CPU bound, and this is the clear demonstration. We are now using a lot less GPU, however we're still keeping the same sort of frame rate. So even though this CPU is a 12,600K at 5 GHz on all E-cores, P-core, sorry, and the P-cores, and the E-core is at 3.8, it's still, not running as good as I should. Anyway, let's now load another area of the game just to show different graphical settings, and let's choose one of the ones that had the bigger change from my point of view.
Wounded and tired, Siri collapsed in the swamp.
The load times are quite quick, I have to say. This is reading from NVMe, but it's not one of the fastest NVMe. This is in fact, it's a 3.0, so it's not the faster. It's like a 3,500 megabytes. So and still you can see it reads very fast. So here, this is scene, I really like it, and now we are going to change some options in here just to improve frame rate again. So while we are at it, let's talk about DLSS 3 in this game. It's my understanding that this is bringing a new version of DLSS 3, an updated one that seems to be working even better. I am not sure if you are going to notice here in this version, because it's running obviously on YouTube and is captured at 60 frames per second, if you're going to notice any of the wrong frames or generated frames. While playing, I have to say I could not see anything wrong, anything. I'm not saying it's not happening, I just could not. And in this area you can see the combat is happening and no problems whatsoever. I can see any frame that is being bad. As you can see, that's one of the errors I see constantly in this game, is that some of the disappearing and appearing parts, and you may say, well, it's because Gerald was in the middle, but normally it should appear once Gerald is out of the way, and you can see that it wasn't. You can see all the reflections in here, how this area looks really beautiful with that. It makes the water mode is nicer, and the whole lighting of the environment make everything looks much better. The shadows that you can see now casted everywhere looks really cool. One of the things, unfortunately, this didn't solve, and I can see here, is the LOD and distance of shadows and some objects that keeps appearing in front of me. That's one of the things I hate the most in modern computer games. I wish they on PC we could just say infinity, or just a distance that you are not able to easily see. If you have the power for it, they should just allow you to do it. I think Dying Light did this, but then people used to put it on ultra or maximum, and then they were complaining the game was too slow, and they have to remove the option because, well, people were doing that. So yeah, we can have nice things apparently. I think this is the last area that I'm going to show today, and it's an area that I really like because the lightning in this and the sky, as you can see, is much nicer than before. The lightning is really beautiful, but as you can see, that's what I was saying, some of the trees are just appearing in front of my eye, even though you see how they improve LOD, and it's something I don't really like. Too bad. I think there was a mod that allowed you to go beyond what the game offered initially in terms of quality. So maybe if it works with this version, I can improve the distance of the LOD. So maybe we can still get a better quality. Anyway, you can see this scene is very nice. All the reflections, the lightning, the vegetation, everything is really cohesive and beautiful. And something that catch my eye here, and I'm not sure if this was in the original version, is the shadow of the of that boat. But it's not the shadow itself that caught my attention. And you're going to see something I did by mistake. I wasn't even trying to do that, and then something happened that really caught my eyes, and I was like, wow, look at that. Look how the torch is casting shadow, coloring that shadow. Look, when I move, and I don't remember if that was in the original, because my knowledge of this is that the only light being traced is the global illumination, not every single point light. So I'm not quite sure if that torch is also ray traced or if that happened on the original version. I will have to go back and check by myself, but yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a nice effect, and it looked quite nice. So then for some reason I wanted just to see for performance options, just what happens if I remove the anti-alias completely from this game. Just what sort of performance do I get? And what I discover is that these games need temporal information. It does need it. Look at this. How shimmery is that? It looks almost pixelated. I'm not quite sure if that's because of the ray tracing, or it's just because the game will behave like that as soon as you take anti-alias. You need some temporal information. Unfortunately, I didn't test the game with FXAA, so because as we know, FXAA is just a spatial technique, so I'm not quite sure how it will have look. I now test with TAAU, which is temporal anti-alias upscale, and it looks much better than without. It's not as nice looking, and there is still some areas that doesn't look quite great. But it's so good. It's so much better than without. Obviously not as good as DLSS, and probably not as good as FSR2. But anyway, I think this is all I'm going to be talking today about this game. I hope you like the video. If you like, please subscribe, hit the like button and share it. I know it's annoying to ask this sort of stuff, but I really would like the channel to be able to grow, maybe to I don't know, get to 1,000 before next year. Well, I think that's impossible now, but to get to 1,000 as fast as possible and to keep the channel growing. Please leave your comments below, anything you think about the game. What would you like to see in our performance test analysis? That is going to happen, and I'm going to leave you with a little bit of more gameplay. And thank you for watching. See you on the next video.